Good morning, everybody. So, I wanted to explain today what we're going to do. It's going to be different than anything we've ever done, but it's something that I did in the past at a different church, and I'm tweaking it a bit because I think it will be fun. So, I'll tell you what it is. I'm going to have 6 people come up here in a minute to ask them some questions. And actually, can you go to that communion slide, that next one? This one. Okay, so we're not doing communion yet, but I wanted to explain something here. So when I first came to St. Thomas, this came up on the board, and I'm not really a public crier. I don't really like to cry in public. I probably need to work on that, but this was very meaningful to me because I felt like I could identify with each of those things in different ways. And I felt like finally there's a place for me who's giving me some space to just try to follow Jesus, who's letting me fail, which I don't really think that Jesus thinks that we fail, but I think that we think we fail. Um, and a place that is inviting me to come often, or a place that's giving me the space to not come for a while. I had so much obligation and guilt associated with my faith and church, and I just had a lot of baggage I had to work through. And that's kind of how I ended up here. And so every time we said this, I would just cry and I could not get through it. Like even I have a little lump in my throat right now. And I thought, I want to the other piece of this is I want to give us a chance this summer while Matt is not here. By the way, he's on sabbatical if you didn't know. I wanted to give us a chance to get to know each other better in a deeper way. But I also kind of didn't want to like tell you everything about each person. I wanted to just answer a few questions to give like kind of a teaser so that you're like, hey, I want to know more about that person. I want to ask them more questions about that thing they said. But also, not just that, I want to give you the opportunity to think of questions to ask the person next to you. So I know that we're a small church, but I also know that we don't really know each other very well. And so if there's some questions that I am asking some people today, I would like to invite that to be a prompt for you to ask somebody. And I don't like weird things where you're like, turn to the person on your left and ask them a question. I hate that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to make you do that. But I'm just going to encourage you to, in your own time, as you're talking to people after church, maybe ask them one of these questions or not, whatever your comfort level. So I'm going to do this again in August with different people. I'm going to bring up 6 people who I don't want to put people in a category. I'll let them categorize themselves. But I thought I wanted to kind of find people that might fall in different categories of this. So maybe somebody who has much faith, they're pretty comfortable in their faith. Maybe somebody who would like to have more. Somebody who's been here often, and somebody who hasn't been here for a long time, and some who have tried to follow Jesus, and maybe somebody who feels like they failed, which again, I don't feel like Jesus thinks that we fail. I think that we think that we fail. So Donald and Sheila, come on up. Caitlin and Bo, if you don't mind coming on up. Chad and Tyler. We're gonna try and squeeze everybody up here. And I'm gonna move this a little bit so that Zoom can see all of us. And I'm also gonna give you this right here. Actually, if we pass this mic around to everybody and then I use the handheld, okay, we'll pass this one around. And I'm going to use it. This fun. Oh, how do I do this? We'll turn it on. Okay. Gracias. So what I did is I said to everybody, if you can each answer, the first question for everybody would be to introduce yourself, and then in this call to communion, how do you identify? We're going to take up our entire sermon and discussion time for this, but if we have extra time at the end, I'll let you ask them questions if they don't mind. So first of all, can we just pass the mic down? Just introduce yourself, and you can start, Sheila. Yeah, who are you, and what do you most identify with in this, and maybe why? Like a minute. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
My name is Sheila Lawrence Twist. This is my husband. And for me, the one that right now that I most identify with is you who have not been here for a long time. And for us, the reason why I travel a lot for work, and we just aren't around a lot. We were gone almost the entire last half of April, all of May, part of June. So we just don't get to be here as often. We live outside of town also. So sometimes when we get home, we just want to be home. So that's me.
That's a good excuse. My name's Donald, and you know, for the same reasons as Sheila stated as well, I have not been here for a long time, but you know, for me, it's also my mother passed away pretty recently, and while I was in Montana during the funeral, I went to my home church that I grew up in, and it was hard to go back to the church that I grew up in and Cassy grew up in, and so the pastor there, Pastor Jim said, you know, you're always welcome home, and it was good to hear it, and so, but all that to say is, you know, it's been a long time, yeah.
My name's Chad Hedberg, and when I look at that statement, I kind of see three spectrums. You have much faith, would like to have more, been here often, not for a long time, tried to follow Jesus, and those who have failed. So if those are three spectrums, I'm probably on the wrong end of the spectrum. If someone who considers themselves a good Christian is looking at that, and so if I'm going to put myself there, I would say, yeah, that's kind of where I fit, in the wrong spot, and so there's my baggage.
Okay.
I'm Tyler, and I think I've definitely identified with each of these lines at different times in my life. And I guess the one that kind of resonates with me most now is just you have been here often. That church has just always been probably the most consistent part of my life, even through a lot of periods of deconstruction and baggage and all that as well. And so I think even in that can have a little baggage sometimes of just like it becomes so routine that you kind of lose some of the meaning behind it, or it just, you know, it's trying to remember even as often as I come, oh yeah, why are we actually doing this and what is this about? So that's kind of where I identify.
My name is Bo St. Peter, and as far as those three, no, there's more than three. Those, I'd say right now it's who would not in a greedy way, but would like more. Jesus talks about eternal life being relationship with Him, and I feel like each step I've taken closer and closer to Jesus, He's better. Not necessarily things are better, but He's better, and I kind of want more of that.
I'm Caitlin St. Peter, and I think similarly I've found myself on each one of those lines at some point or another. And I think we're here. I would say probably been here often. I think we're the only couple who have been here since like the inception of St. Thomas now, since we were meeting in Matt's house, their old house. And of course our attendance has probably varied in different seasons, but with that in mind, I feel like we're representing the often that we've been here for a while. And also like always wanting to have more faith for sure. Yeah. And this is Hattie. She'll probably be attached to me the whole time.
So I sent out, we can go to the next slide. Thanks, everybody. I sent out questions to everybody and gave them choices of what they wanted to answer and just said, you know, what are your like top 2 or 3? So do you care if I just go down the line? Then there we go. We'll just start with you, Caitlin.
Okay.
So one of the questions that Caitlin and Bo both said that they wanted to answer was why St. Thomas, and what led you here?
Yeah, okay. So I'll tell it and Bo can fill in gaps, I guess, if I forget. So as mentioned, Matt and Becca, well, we've been here since the beginning, and they have been good friends of ours. And so they approached us. At the time, we were kind of half committed to other churches, but not really, like, hadn't really landed anywhere since we've been married. And so they approached us about joining them and helping start St. Thomas. And I think we were a little reluctant, and we definitely committed to pray about it. But he was in full-time ministry, and so to us, we were like, okay, that sounds very exhausting to plant a church. And he was even like, no, I promise, like, I don't want this to be another ministry for you. We just want you to like be able to come. And so I don't know, we didn't really have a reason to say no necessarily. So we said yes, and we started coming, and just kind of kept saying yes. And I think we've reevaluated every once in a while and thought, like, is this still a good spot for us? And we really thought, like, there's nowhere else that we would be necessarily. And for me, it was a very refreshing take on church. I think I'd grown up in such a always this big church setting, where it's like a production, and I've even been a part of that production, being on like worship teams and things, which was great and stuff. But it was just really nice to be somewhere where I could just kind of sit and wrestle and ask my questions and untangle some of the stuff that I've grown up believing. And so, yeah, I think St. Thomas offered a good space for that. Would you add
You have
anything?
anything to add, Bo?
Yeah. I'd say like it was one thing that we kind of struggled with at the beginning was like, do we need another like church plant in Salem? There's already a lot of churches, and I kind of fell into a category of would rather have more healthier churches than just more churches. And one thing that was fun is a large reason why we did commit is we just love Matt and Becca and believe in them, but also this church model being it's set up in a way that is easier to start anew instead of like transform from the inside. And so like that was kind of a fun conversation with Matt at the beginning of why here and why now. So.
Thanks, Bo. And Tyler wanted to answer the same question. So why St. Thomas for you, Tyler, and what led you here?
Yeah. So, first of all, I guess what led me here was I was part of a previous church that was kind of like a sister church to St. Thomas and part of the same denomination, and ended up the church shut down a little over a year ago. And so before that point, we had done some shared services with St. Thomas and everything, and kind of seen a little taste of like what it was about and everything, and was really intrigued, like, oh, this seems like a really neat church, and was drawn to like seemed like it was a really good community of people, and just really liked the spirit of like humility and authenticity. And that's something that I've always been really drawn to with churches. Just like I think it is so centered on the community and the people rather than just like a production or a presentation. And so that drew me here. And then like why I really enjoyed it and continue to be part of St. Thomas is just like seeing so many aspects that I really appreciate. Like especially when I was starting, I was still, I think, working through a lot of different just baggage and deconstruction and reconstruction and things in my own faith, and felt like a really safe and helpful place to kind of process through some of those things, and really appreciate like Matt and the leadership and just the way that they're able to speak with clarity and truth, but still hold a lot of space for where everyone's at and for humility and just like being able to help facilitate that process. I've found really helpful and beneficial for myself, and just, yeah, really come to appreciate and admire all of the people here and all of you as I see each of your lives, and inspired and encouraged by each of the things I see you doing and the way that you're living out your faith. So that's why I've stayed.
And Chad, you want to do number 3, is that right?
The
Tell us
something about
something
yourself.
about yourself that maybe most of us don't know. Sure.
Yeah. So when I was a toddler, I was burned very badly in an accident. That was an event that was kind of the defining moment in the life of our family. It was an accident that my dad caused, and it was kind of a turning point spiritually in his life. And so I grew up with this this narrative of this horrible accident that God used to bring about good in our family, and that I was alive for a reason. God had kept me around because he had something special in mind. And that was a narrative that functioned really well for me. It gave me a lot of self-confidence and this idea of having value and importance. And it wasn't until I had kids of my own that I realized kind of the shadow side of that. And I realized that I was kind of walking on eggshells with God, because I believe that if I slipped up, if I made a mistake, that God. So I do enough public crying for Cassy, and
Yeah. Chad's the
I
public
both.
crier.
I make up for her cold-heartedness. So when I had kids of my own, I realized I was walking on eggshells with God, because if I screwed up, I had this belief that God wouldn't do anything to me; He'd take it out on my kids in order to get my attention. And when I realized that, I knew that was inconsistent with what I believed about God, but I couldn't shake how I felt about God, and trying to separate those two things was very traumatic in my spiritual life, and it's something that I think I'm still kind of recovering from, because I don't know how to take the skewed aspects about how God relates to me. I don't know how to separate those from what I really believe and want God to be, and so it's a difficult process to trying to separate those two.
Thanks, Chad. Donald, you wanted to answer why St. Thomas and what led you here?
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
So let's see. Uh, Let me start out by saying, I don't know if you guys remember who Brian Genso is. He's this large guy, red beard, Viking-looking dude. Brian and I are very close. We're roommates, and both going through divorces and trying to figure life out and where God is and all that jazz. And Brian was very good for me in my life, and I trust him wholeheartedly. And when Sheila and I were dating and seeing each other, Brian wanted to do coffee with us. And when you're trying to figure out how a relationship's going to go, how a marriage is going to go, how you guys are going to unify and become one, and how faith figures into that and plays a part, it could be challenging. It can be seriously challenging. And Brian said, hey, have you thought about St. Thomas? I'm like, what's a St. Thomas? And he's like going, well, basically, it's a place where, if you've been injured in a church or had a rough experience, you might be able to find something concerning God and restart, or, it could be helpful, and check it out. And so Sheila and I decided to come and be a part of this. And, what's hilarious is even though we're not here very much, we tell people about this church, and we brag about this church. Just even this morning we did. Yeah. We've got a barista who's going to be coming next week type thing. And so it was interesting. It was unique. It was the right timing, and it was helpful for us in our relationship, in our faith, and we just appreciate it.
Thanks, Donald. Sheila, tell us something about yourself. This is the right one, right?
Yes.
Yes. Start with 5. Okay. If you could go back in time, what is a piece of spiritual advice you would give your future self?
We're going to start with that one because it's a little more deep than something about
the other
myself.
one.
So yeah, this one has a little more to do with my faith. So if I could go back in time, the thing I would tell myself is to trust God and trust the path that He has for me. I questioned that a lot. I say all the time, everything happens for a reason, but I think it's God's reason, that He has that reason and He guides us. So as bad as it got, as horrible as life could get throughout from the time I was a child all the way through my life, trust God and trust that path that he wanted me to go on. And every time I tried to argue with him, he always got me back in line, and it worked out for the best. So that would be mine.
Should we just pass it down that way?
Yeah.
You want to go next? You want to
Now something about myself.
Question? Yeah, tell us something about yourself that maybe
There are
most
so
of us
many
don't know.
things,
Tell us
but
something really fun.
in church,
Yeah.
I wasn't
We
going
know
to do this
something.
one because I was in church, but I was
Sheila's a prostitute.
once a prostitute. It was in the line of duty. I was a police officer, and a neighboring agency asked me to work undercover as a prostitute. So I sometimes use that story at Thanksgiving or in inappropriate times. I never once imagined I would say it in church. But my biggest fear in that was that nobody would stop. And at the time, I was a lieutenant, and all of my sergeants from our agency said they were going to load up in a van, load their children in the van, and drive by and show all of them, there's a prostitute. That's what a prostitute looks like. And I was their supervisor, and so I refused to tell them where we were working, and it was actually very sad because of the people that stopped. And but I was a prostitute for a short period of time.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for your honesty. And the guy got there was a serial killer involved.
Oh
wasn't
yes,
there?
there was a serial killer involved.
There was
The
a
last
serial-
person that stopped. I was all mic'd up. I had a Pepsi bottle that had a camera in it, and the person that stopped gave me the creeps from the beginning. Had a carton of cigarettes in his car. They said, don't ask for more than $40 because they'll know you're a cop. So I got him to $40, and then I got him to throw in the carton of cigarettes. And so the guys were like, Sheila, why'd you do that? You had him at 40. And I said, well, it's the principle. I think I don't smoke, but I was worth more. Now I'm embarrassed. Now you know way more than you ever wanted to know. So when they followed him and stopped him, he had already downloaded photos of me. He'd been going by multiple times. And when they ran him, he had been arrested. He'd gone to prison for killing a prostitute in Polk County. So I said, I'm done. Gives me chills still. He went back to prison over that. So, yeah. Now you know way more than you ever wanted to know.
Did you want to share anything else?
No.
Or is that
Oh.
okay?
My story was, most people don't know, I rescued a parrot, an Amazon parrot. That is part of my faith in animals. I love animals. We have a house full of them, and her name is Sweet Pea, and she's not very friendly. She was very abused. I can't even pet her. I've always wanted to pet her, but she talks a little bit to us, and I love her.
Yeah. Now you're off the hook now. Thank you. Donald, tell us something that you are passionate about and why.
Yes. So I am passionate about clay. I'm passionate about pottery. I love playing in the mud. It is honestly one of my favorite things in the world to be able to create something from almost nothing. Can you say that? And to see, how it turns out, and to bless others with it. To be able to say, here you go. It's more than an ashtray. Enjoy it, and to see them be excited about what I create too. But the reason, I don't even know if I can get through. The reason why, clay for me began was because my earliest memory is of my father, who was a potter, and he put me into his lap, and we formed a bowl together. And it just really hits me hard and benefits me to have an understanding of my relationship with my Father in heaven, and how he views me and works with me, continues to work with me. And so that's all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you. Chad, if you could go back in time, what's a piece of spiritual advice you would give your future self?
I think I would tell myself to leave more space for mystery and uncertainty. I feel like I kind of painted myself into a corner spiritually, and so when some significant doubts and questions arose, I didn't have room for that in the way that my faith was structured, and the amount of zeal that I wanted to have in my faith. Um, and it's kind of interesting thinking about that because I honestly think that back then my response to my future self would have been pity, and I just would have started kind of doubling down on that serious and zealous faith and tried to pray harder to avoid heading down that slippery slope that I most certainly must have gone down to be giving my past self this horrible advice. So I don't know. It's kind of a fun thought experiment to go down, but yeah, I guess that's what I would tell myself.
Thanks, Chad. Tyler, tell us something about yourself that maybe most of us don't know.
Well, something that I think a couple of you may know, but maybe not most, is that I was actually once a pastor of a house church when I was 22 years old. So it was kind of an interesting circumstance where I got involved with the church through a fellow student who was telling me about the church and gave me the information. And I showed up one day and they're like, oh, we didn't actually think you'd show up. And through that, eventually started serving more and more, got to a point where I was eventually co-pastoring with the man who founded the church. And then at one point when he took on a new job and just didn't have enough time to still continue doing both, basically said, all right, it's your church now, do whatever you want with it. And at 22, I was kind of just like, okay, I don't think I'm ready for this, but we'll see what happens. And so it was a really good experience in a lot of ways, and definitely shaped and grew my faith and helped me gain a new trust for God, and was also really difficult in a lot of ways of just seeing a lot of brokenness in people's lives, and even in a lot of the people who I really admired and was mentored by, seeing a lot of their brokenness as well. And that was kind of an interesting thing to work through, and that kind of, I think, made my faith difficult for a while, is trying to reconcile that of what do I do with, seeing God's power work and transforming lives, but also seeing, that the people who follow him aren't perfect, and that, even the people I admire and respect, that they have brokenness too. And how do you show grace and compassion in that, and how do you see the grace of God in that? So yeah, that was a very, I think, formative experience for me, and still kind of resonates in a lot of different ways of both the highs and the lows of my faith.
Thanks, Tyler. Oh, tell us something about that you're passionate about and why.
Sweet. This is kind of it's kind of fun because I forget what we talked about. So, the passionate about. A few things come to mind. Well, anything fun. So like backflips and climbing. Like legitimately though, like just anything that's fun that you can just enjoy. Whether for me it happens to be like movement things, and all those things, but along the same lines, I'd say just kids in the community in general is something that I'm super passionate about. In that, the question that has been burning in my brain for the last year or so is just what if this was the best place to be a kid? This Salem, schools, families, all of that. What if it was the best place to be a kid? And I don't necessarily think it is right now. And I think it's challenging, but to see kids figure out, and when I say kid, I'm thinking like middle school on, elementary school. It's not it's not for me, unless they're my own. But when they figure out, one, that the Lord's created them with purpose and identity and agency in the world, and then they get to figure out like how to live out of that and from that, and that they can do things in the world, is pretty incredible. And so. And then also like just setting up spots for them to be kids, and fun is a big part of that. So that's why I say fun.
I like fun too.
Same question?
Same question?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think currently it's just like raising these tiny humans, and but more importantly, like trying to raise emotionally healthy humans in a world that is very difficult. So I feel like that's a lot of what I'm like consuming and trying to, figure out and how to apply and also be emotionally healthy myself. And then like on the professional side, kind of a little bit mixed. I'm a school psychologist, and so I get to work with kids in a lot of different facets, but mostly special needs and with kids with disabilities. And so I'm learning a lot about how to create spaces that are inclusive and equitable and where all kids can belong. So like that's kind of a lot of a mixture of all those things is what I've been thinking about a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that we got 2 questions plus the first one for everybody, but now we have extra time. We have 8 minutes exactly. If I was going to be like Matt and stick to the exact time, which I am not, I have 8 minutes. But if everybody wanted to share one more thing, or if any of you had questions, so I'm going to give you a choice. If you'd like to answer another question, you can. If you're like, peace out, I'm done, I want to go, that's fine too, whatever. Or if any of you have any clarifying questions. So that was a lot of choices. I'm sorry. Caitlin, are there any other questions that you would like to answer?
I think, well, the last one about going back in time, this could be a short answer, but one of the things I thought about is just telling myself to like just get to know Jesus and get to know who he is and what he's about. And so that when like the church, a large church, like throws a lot of other stuff on there, you can kind of just it helps with the untangling that I've been going through and getting to know like what is the core of who Jesus is and also just what that God can handle the gamut of emotions. I think there was a time where I thought I had to present myself as a certain way, and then when we went through a very tough season of throwing all my emotions at the Lord and all my doubts, it was like he could take it. So I think that'd be what I told myself.
Choice. Either
I'm good.
questions or
Whatever.
you're like, I'm done. Yeah. Anybody have questions? We can bring the mic to you. Anything clarifying? Any more stories that you want to know? You can just raise your hand. Or if any of you has another question that you would like to answer. I know some of you prepared for 3 questions.
I'll answer the last question as well.
Okay.
Just, I think my answer would be very similar to Chad's in just saying, don't get so caught up in trying to find absolute certainty, because that really slowed me down a lot in the past, I think, was just trying to have complete certainty and concreteness in certain things and not allowing enough space for the mystery of God and for just the fact that there's always going to be some gaps and some space for faith of, being able to trust God and know who he is enough to still be able to move forward in those uncertainties and doubts.
What do you guys spend the most money on?
Animals. Probably my animals. The
miniature
sweet
zoo
pea,
at your
the
house.
rescue. We completely remodeled our bathroom so that she would have her own space. She has a Taj Mahal and a garden window that she can look at all the outside birds. And yeah, so probably animals for me.
Yeah, if Sweet Pea ever passes away, there will be another parrot to be there. But yeah, meet Clay. I spent a lot of money on Clay. So yeah.
What do you spend money on, Chad?
Yeah, just boring stuff. I mean, yeah, house
Bikes?
payments, stuff like that. But of the expendable income, probably bikes.
Chad has a lot of bikes.
Mountain bikes mostly, but I do have a pedal.
Tell us
pedal
about all your
type ones.
bikes.
It's too boring.
There's a lot of bikes. I don't know, 4?
Well, just me or for the whole family?
Just for you.
I have
Road bike?
I have 3. You could make an argument that there's 4.
There's 4.
I feel like I'm pretty boring as well. I don't like do a ton of luxury expenses, so it's probably like I guess food and stuff when I am indulging, like eating out or even just like, getting stuff to bake something or to cook something fancy. So
We house, kids, and trips. That's pretty much
In
it.
that order.
Yeah, actually, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, the trips. Yeah, I was gonna say, we have a very good group of friends and with kids similar ages, and one of the things that's been really sweet is that we've kind of prioritized weekends away with them periodically. So just like Sun River, or last time we went to Black Butte and tried to do like a snow adventure for the kids. So it's just little things like that. But I think that's where we put those bigger chunks. I guess
That's fun.
that, and we bought a house last year, so everything goes to that.
Everything. Any other questions? Ben has a question. You need a mic. Say it and then I'll repeat it in the mic. So, do you mind repeating the question?
If you ask for more than $40, they'll know you're a cop. And every single one asked me if I was a cop, and I just turned it around on them and got very angry and said, "No, I'm not a
What
cop.
are you a cop?"
And yeah. What's that? No, it's not entrapment at all. You don't have to. People think that. They think if they ask you and you lie, then they get to do whatever they want. I mean, that they get away with it, but no, that's not true.
So for Zoom, the question was, what was the going rate for prostitutes? Is that the question?
It was a few years ago.
Kids, I forgot the first one. Kids playground. What would Salem look like if it was a place good for kids? Yeah? Is that kind of?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I'm the director for Young Life in the Salem, Kaiser, Cascade kind of area, and I don't have the answer on like everything that it would look like, but I do know that on the ACEs score, aside from having a solid household, the next best thing is having a caring adult in your life that you can turn to outside of your family.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see in my seat is there are a lot of caring adults. There are awesome teachers, awesome coaches, but they are spread super thin. And so the thing that is in my brain the most is getting caring adults into the world of kids. Instead of building something for them and trying to get them to our thing, just going to be in their world. That's the biggest thing, because how many of us at some point in our lives either needed an adult or had an adult that like cared for us. That's probably the biggest thing, and I think it's the first domino to fall in the whole thing of someone going into their world and just caring, just to be with them. So, yeah.
Thanks, Bo. I think that we used up all of our time. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate all of you being vulnerable. I know that this is really a different thing to do. We went from one question to the next, and it switching subjects and going from a question that makes you cry to a question that makes you laugh. That's challenging for you on the panel. So I appreciate that, and thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you all for listening, and I'm super looking forward to what we have stored for us this summer. I think Matt's missing out personally, but that's okay. You guys are free to go.